C, got the fucking juice.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT, on here reacting to the biggest trades from the 2024 NFL trade deadline. I got some takes, got some thoughts that I got to get off about a couple of these big moves. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching, YouTube, X, Facebook. Greatly appreciate you for spending some of your afternoon with me as we go over some of these big time trades that were made today at the 4 p.m. Eastern time deadline. The Steelers, it looks like they're going all in on trying to make a Super Bowl run. The Ravens get a former Pro Bowler at corner. The Commanders, to me, they won the day getting Marshon Lattimore. And the Dallas Cowboys, I don't know what Jerry Jones and the boys got going on down there in the Big D, but you can't do anything but laugh at it at this point. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in, man. Do me a favor before we begin. Smash that like button, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we go live and when we drop new content. Check us out on all podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. So the Pittsburgh Steelers were really active the day at the deadline. Not only did they just get wide receiver Mike Williams, but they also got some depth to go along their pass rush, acquiring Preston Smith. They get Mike Williams for a fifth rounder from the New York Jets. He's 30 years old. He's on a one-year deal worth $10 million. The Steelers are going to pay the rest of his deal out. And he didn't really do that much for the Jets during his brief stint there. Only caught 12 passes for 166 receiving yards. And he's averaging 13.8 yards per reception, which is the second lowest of his career. And initially, when the Steelers made this trade for Mike Williams, I was really upset about it. You mean to tell me this was the best you could do? Mike Williams, he is not what he used to be. And I would have loved for the Steelers to gone out there or at least get Cooper Kupp or get somebody that was a little bit younger, had a little bit more upside. But the more I started to think about this trade, I was telling myself, maybe this isn't that bad of a deal after all. Mike Williams, he more so struggles to stay healthy, more so him not being a good player. I still believe that he does have a little bit of juice left in the tank. And when he was healthy for the Chargers, he was the best wide receiver in the league at making circus catches. Every time you watched Mike Williams during his prime when he was in LA, he was always making some kind of highlight reel catch that ended up on SportsCenter or ended up going viral. And you think about the skill set that he has compared to George Pickens, they kind of are a little bit of the same player if you ask me. George Pickens, he makes a lot of tough catches, and same thing goes for Mike Williams. And now you got two big body wide receivers on the outside, which could open things up for Roman Wilson when he's able to get healthy and he can get up on the field. Or when you move Calvin Austin into the slot, it also can open up more opportunities for Pat Freiermuth in the passing game as well. I'm not totally against this trade for Mike Williams. I actually believe it's a pretty decent deal considering the Steelers only get him for a fifth-round pick. And if they can get him playing at the level that he was prior to those injuries that he sustained with the Chargers these last couple of years, this could be one of the better moves that any team has made at the deadline. My biggest problem is just, availability is key. And I'm not really on board with trading for a guy that already has reached that age where you start to see players regress. And two, you don't know how healthy he's going to be for Pittsburgh. How many games are the Steelers going to get out of Mike Williams? Is he going to be able to play the entirety of this season, including the playoffs, or is he only going to be available for 3-4 games and then he missed the rest of the season due to an injury? You never know with a guy like Mike Williams. It seems like you breathe on him and he gets injured. But with how well Russell Wilson throws the deep ball, how aggressive the Steelers want to be running the football, getting the play action passing game going, Mike Williams could be the key to unlock a little bit more potential that the Steelers have yet to reach on offense. Defensively, though, I love the trade to get Preston Smith. He is 32 years old. He no longer is the player that he used to be in his prime, but in the 9 games that he played for the Packers, he had 2.5 sacks. He was a really good run defender. Pro Football Focus gave him a 67.6 run defense grade, which is above average. And he's going to be a really good rotational player on the Steelers' defensive line. You already got Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, but when one of those guys needs a break, Preston Smith can come in and still give you some pretty good production. And you got somebody that could be a good rotational player or a good situational pass rusher. Let's say the Steelers want to throw a little bit more juice on 3rd down to get a little bit more pressure on the quarterback. You could insert Preston Smith on the defensive line, rather you got him playing on the interior, or if you want to use him as just an outside edge rusher, he does have a good amount of versatility and the different amount of positions that you can play him at. And with trading for 2 older players, it shows to me the Steelers believe that they could actually make a playoff run this year. They are off to a really fast start at 6-2 on top of the AFC North. Obviously, we are about to see just how good this team is over the next couple of weeks. You got the Commanders coming up this Sunday. Next week, you got to play the Baltimore Ravens, and you get into your divisional round games or your divisional matchups because the Steelers still haven't played anybody inside of the AFC North. So these next couple of weeks are going to show a lot about how far the Steelers could go in the playoffs if they even make it that far, because we could see this team fall off. They started off hot last year and they kind of drifted off during the second half of the season, losing to the Cardinals and the Patriots. So we're going to see if the Steelers can keep this momentum up moving forward. But when you trade for 2 guys that are 30 years old, kind of on the tail end of their career, it kind of is a tall tale that the Steelers have confidence that this is a team that's good enough to be more than a one-and-done team come playoff time, which, you know, I really don't know if these are the 2 trades that can really get the Steelers over the hump. Maybe Mike Williams and Preston Smith could help them win a playoff game depending on their matchup. If you do win this division, then you do get a home field playoff game for the first round. But you know, these are decent trades. They provide good depth. Mike Williams gives you a good playmaker on the outside alongside George Pickens, and Preston Smith gives you more depth on that defensive line, and you get a really good run defender. But I don't really view these as trades that are going to transcend the Steelers to a level that makes them better than what they already are at the moment. Shout out to Kate Roan with the $4.99 donation. Greatly appreciated. She says, powerful JT Sports Live. Makes my day amazing, man. Steelers got a real shot at a Super Bowl run with Mike Williams and will be better in Pittsburgh than the New York Jets. I hope so. Shout out to Chris Brady. He says, I took shots on these tonight. Central Michigan plus 14. Miami, Ohio, Ball State over 48. Maction, man, you got those MAC games, Chris Brady. I can't bet on MAC football. It's just too unpredictable. Who really are the good teams? Who really are the bad teams? You really don't know betting on the MAC because the talent discrepancy between the best team in the MAC and the worst team in the MAC, you know, it really isn't any. And I guess that's why watching Maction is so entertaining, because you don't really know what to expect. Every time you watch a MAC conference game, you're always in for a lot of chaos and wackiness. But shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching. let's continue on. We got more trades that we got to talk about. Now, the Baltimore Ravens, their secondary has been their biggest weakness of their team up to this point of the season. So what do they do to address it? Well, you go ahead and you trade for a former Pro Bowler in Tre'Davious White from the Los Angeles Rams. You're getting him in exchange for a 7th-round pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. And meanwhile, you get back a 6th-rounder for 2027. Now, the key to determining how good of an addition Tre'Davious White is going to be heavily hinges on if the Ravens can do what no other team in the league seems to be able to do as consistently as what they can, which is rejuvenate and revitalize the career of guys who are perceived to be past their prime. There is no team in the NFL that gets the most out of washed up players than what the Baltimore Ravens do. They did it a few years ago with Justin Houston. Maybe you can strike oil and get Tre'Davious White to play at the level that he was before he suffered those ACL and Achilles injuries that caused him to fall off in Buffalo. He's 29 years old. He only started 4 games with the Rams this season, so you're getting somebody that has relatively fresh legs, somebody that really shouldn't have any durability problems coming in for you. And with you starting him, don't know who he's going to start over. Are you going to put him over Brandon Stevens? Is he going to be more of a slot corner? We don't really know, but you only had to give up a 7th-round pick. So I think this is pretty good value for a guy that I don't want to write him off and say that it's over for him, but it kind of looks that way. But the Ravens are one of those franchises that they get these older guys in, they get them to believe in themselves, and they start playing at a high level. So maybe you can find a way to get some more juice out of Tre'Davious White. Some of y'all seem to forget that before the injuries, Tre'Davious White was one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He was really good in man coverage, a really good press corner. He was really aggressive. But after those 2 injuries that he sustained over the last couple of years, he hasn't really been the same player. And for Baltimore, this is kind of a roll of the dice because you don't give up a lot to get him. But at the same time, it's not a guarantee that he's going to be better from what you've already had at the cornerback position. So this is one of those moves that is hard to really gauge if it's going to work out or not, because you kind of just have to see it to judge it. And that's kind of how I feel about this Tre'Davious White trade. I don't believe this trade moves the needle for Baltimore in terms of them being a better team now than what they already are. I actually think they kind of made a mistake trading for Tre'Davious White instead of going ahead and trading for Marshon Lattimore from the New Orleans Saints. The Commanders got him for a 3rd, 4th, and a 6th-rounder. Marshon Lattimore would have been a bigger addition to Baltimore than Tre'Davious White because Marshon Lattimore is still a top 10 cornerback in the game, arguably top 5 when he's on the field, and he's a much better player at that point of his career than what Tre'Davious White is, and plus he's a lot younger. His cap hit is a lot bigger, and the Baltimore Ravens, they don't necessarily have a lot of cap space flexibility at the moment, so if they would have made that trade for Marshon Lattimore, it kind of would have stressed them out with their cap situation. But when you're going all in on winning the Super Bowl this year and you got an opportunity to get past the Kansas City Chiefs with you having a better overall team and roster, you go ahead and you sacrifice some of that cap flexibility. You go ahead and you go a little bit under the cap to get a guy like Marshon Lattimore because you know you're going to get more out of him in terms of high-level play than what you're going to get out of Tre'Davious White. Not saying that Tre'Davious White can't end up coming in and playing good for Baltimore, but it's a guarantee that Marshon Lattimore would give you good cornerback play as opposed to Tre'Davious White. He's the ultimate dice roll. It's just you don't really know with him, with his age, his injury history. Lattimore, however, though, up to this point this season, he's having a career low in yards per pass allowed, only allowing 9.5 yards per completion when quarterbacks target him. And Tre'Davious White, he's still giving up well over 10 yards per reception. So Baltimore, I'm not saying this was a bad move, but they could have done a lot better. I would have felt more confident about their secondary improving with Lattimore than them just going with Tre'Davious White. But he is a veteran. He does have a lot of familiarity. And Baltimore, due to how many times them and the Bills have matched up in the past. So we'll see what Marshon Lattimore does. But to me, this was the ultimate dice roll because you're banking on a guy that looks to be past his prime, being able to somewhat play at the level that he was prior to the injuries. And, when you're coming off an ACL and an Achilles injury, you lose a good amount of your athleticism, especially with you being a little bit older, nearing your 30s. So we'll see how this works out. Me, honestly, I wasn't really a big fan of this move. It didn't really scream, oh, yeah, this is going to get the Ravens definitely in the Super Bowl, but the Ravens are one of those teams that they just know how to get the most out of guys who seem to be past their prime. So I'm not ruling out that they could get some good play out of Tre'Davious White, but I don't really think this was a great move to make considering how badly their secondary has struggled when Marshon Lattimore was available. Now, the Washington Commanders, not only have they been dominating this season, but they dominated the trade deadline. They are the biggest winners from this year's trade deadline because you get Marshon Lattimore, who, although he does have some durability concerns, when he's on the field, he's still a top 10 cornerback in the game. And you get him giving up a third, fourth, and sixth rounder, and you get a fifth rounder in return. I felt this was an A++ trade because when he gets healthy, you got somebody that still is relatively young. He's only 28 years old. And when he's been on the field for New Orleans, he's only allowed 9.5 yards per reception, which is a career low that he's allowing. This is the best season of his career, which is surprising because you don't really hear people talk that much about Marshon Lattimore anymore. And it's a little bit surprising because he hasn't fallen off. He still is a elite corner. And the Washington Commanders have a top 5 defense right now in passing yards per game allowed. And they don't really have a lot of household names in that secondary. And you get Marshon Lattimore to boost the already great pass defense. You can take your pass defense to the next level from great to elite now that you have Marshon Lattimore. It should also open things up for your pass rush now that you got a true shutdown corner that can shut down one side of the football field. And it officially means that you can give up on Emmanuel Forbes. Rather, if you cut this dude or you want to play him at safety, but we shouldn't see any more of Emmanuel Forbes at boundary corner this year for Washington because this dude is a bust. He can't play. He's not physical enough. He's too small. He gets out-muscled too often for 50-50 balls. And you bring in Marshon Lattimore, he's going to be the eraser on the opposite side of whoever you have as your second cornerback on the other side. And another thing that makes this such a good trade for Washington is that you're getting somebody on the deal that you have the cap space to be able to pay. And I don't think Marshon Lattimore necessarily has a bad contract neither. And the New Orleans Saints, I don't think they would have moved on from this guy if they had the ability to pay him. Well, if they had the ability to keep him around, but they had to pretty much get rid of him because they got no cap space at all. They are $80 million under the cap, and they were going to have to make some moves to kind of clear some of that money off. And parting ways with Marshon Lattimore probably was one of the decisions that they didn't want to make unless they just had no choice. And with their season already being over, it makes a lot of sense for them to just go ahead, stock up on picks. But the Commanders now, with you having some of your toughest games of the season coming up, you play Pittsburgh this week. You got a matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys down the road as well. Marshon Lattimore gives you a great chance to win these next 3 games because the Steelers don't really have any weapons on the outside that really scare you outside of George Pickens. If Marshon Lattimore can play this Sunday against Pittsburgh, then he could shut down George Pickens, and that could help them increase their chances to win that game. And when you play the Philadelphia Eagles, you know how much of a monster A.J. Brown is. You can line up Marshon Lattimore one-on-one with A.J. Brown, and I believe he could give him a tough outing. And even if you don't line him up against A.J. Brown, same thing goes for Devontae Smith. Like, Marshon Lattimore is the most underrated cornerback in the league because he doesn't get talked about as much anymore as what he used to early in his career when he was a multi-time Pro Bowler. He made it to the Pro Bowl 4 times. He was in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year his first season in the league. He's been a really good corner when he's been available and he's been on the field. He always produces at a really high level. So I love this trade for the Commanders, man. You already kind of got it figured out on offense with how much of a stud Jaden Daniels has looked like, already playing at an elite level. And you help out that defense that surprisingly already ranks top 5 in pass yards per game allowed, and they get even better with the addition of Marshon Lattimore. And the Chiefs were in on him as well, and you rather him go to the Commanders than go to the Chiefs, only because you know the Chiefs, they're trying to three-peat. They've already won 2 straight, and they already got DeAndre Hopkins. The last thing you want to do is help them out. So with him going to the Commanders, it kind of takes away another weapon that possibly could have helped the Chiefs continue their monopoly over the NFL. And as a Commanders fan, you got to be really excited about this team. Around this time last year, you were thinking about what you were going to do in the offseason. Now, you actually have not just a lot of optimism that you're going to make a deep run in the playoffs, but maybe you could be a dark horse Super Bowl contender. Now, I don't remember the last time we've seen a rookie quarterback take a team to the Super Bowl, but Jaden Daniels may be able to do it. Because right now, outside of the Detroit Lions, there hasn't been a team playing better football than what the Washington Commanders have. Maybe the Falcons, but this is the second best team in the NFC conference record-wise. And now that you bolster your defense with the all-star cornerback, you know, you are now in the conversation of being a dark horse Super Bowl contender. Because if Jaden Daniels can keep up this level of play throughout the tough stretch of your schedule that you have coming up over this next month, you know, not only could you find yourself winning this division, holding on to the division lead, but you could have home field advantage through the majority of the playoffs, depending on how the rest of the NFC plays out. So the Commanders, they won the trade deadline with this trade for Marshon Lattimore. Still one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Some people still feel he's top 5. Some may say he's top 10, but he's definitely not washed. He's far from that. When he's on the field, he's a shutdown corner statistically, and a lot of other coaches, offensive coordinators, when they talk about Marshon Lattimore, they always say how it's smarter to avoid him than try to target him. Man, mama, wake up. Jerry Jones and the Cowboys made a trade. Jerry Jones, a few days ago, he said that the Cowboys were going to make some moves. They were going to get active. And what did Jerry and the boys cook up? Oh, they give up a 2025 4th and 7th round selection to trade for Carolina's second-year wide receiver, Jonathan Mingo. And a lot of y'all may be saying, who the hell is Jonathan Mingo? He was a second-round pick by the Panthers in the 2023 NFL Draft out of Ole Miss. And he's a really athletic wide receiver, but from a skill set standpoint, you know, he needs a lot of development when it comes to his route running, being able to beat man-to-man coverage. You know, he has issues with drops. Ball security also has kind of been a problem for him as well. But there is a lot of upside. And you are getting somebody that in his rookie season, he caught 43 receptions on 85 targets for 418 receiving yards and 9.7 yards per reception. This year, he hasn't really seen the field that much. Only 12 catches, 121 yards, and he still has yet to catch his first NFL touchdown. Brandon Cooks is set to return to the Cowboys lineup over the next couple of weeks. He is healthy now. He might not play this week, but he should be back next week. But this is a really bad trade for Dallas. No matter how you want to try to spin this, yeah, the upside for Jonathan Mingo is there, but Jerry, the Kansas City Chiefs got DeAndre Hopkins for a 5th rounder. The Bills got Amari Cooper for a 6th rounder. This was the best you can do. That's the problem with Jerry Jones. When he says the Cowboys are going to make moves, it's nothing to ever get excited about because all he does is make these cheap moves. This was a cheap move. This is not a move that a team that is supposed to be all in makes. This was just one of those moves that you're just trying to kick the tires on one man's trash to see if you can turn it into treasure. And I don't think you're going to get that out of Jonathan Mingo. If the worst team in the NFL is willing to part ways with a guy that's only in his 2nd season, that shows a lot. And the Dallas Cowboys, they like kicking the tires on these reclamation projects. They gave up a mid-round pick a few years back for Trey Lance, and the brother isn't even a backup quarterback. He can't even beat out Cooper Rush, and you're kicking the tires on Jonathan Mingo, who isn't even better than Jalen Tolbert. And you gave up a 4th round pick, which most 4th rounders turn into either serviceable starters or backups, and you pretty much lose out on a starter with this pick, giving it to the Carolina Panthers when you could have gotten this dude for only a 6th or 7th round pick. Nobody else would have given a 4th rounder for a dude that's in year 2 and has yet to catch a touchdown up to this point in his career. What the hell is Jerry Jones doing, man? Can he just sell the team? Can't he trade him for Jonathan Mingo? What hell? How does this help Dallas? You got no Dak Prescott. He's on injury reserve. So you're going to give Cooper Rush, a guy who can't get open, struggles to create separation, struggles with drops. There is a lot of athleticism that he has. When he was coming out of Ole Miss, he got a lot of comparisons to DK Metcalf, but this is just too much of a project to be giving up a 4th round pick for. Listen, the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, there's a reason why they called them America's team, because there's always a reason to talk about them, whether you're praising them or you're criticizing them. We seem to be doing more criticizing than praising of the Dallas Cowboys nowadays because Jerry Jones, bro, what is he doing? This season has just been a complete disaster from Dallas. Everybody knew the Cowboys were going to be a disappointment. Spinning back to the offseason when Jerry said they were going to go all in and they didn't do anything. You could have signed Derrick Henry. You let him go to Baltimore. Look how that's worked out for you. Look how bad your run game has been. You paid Dak Prescott just for him to have the worst season of his career. He's injured. You've had a lot of injuries on the defense and offense. And if anything, you could have used more help on the defensive line. You could have traded for Zadarius Smith. You could have traded for a Khalil Herbert. Those trades would have had a bigger impact on improving your team than getting Jonathan Mingo. How is Jonathan Mingo going to be the X factor to help turn your spiraling season around? It's not. This was the worst trade of this trade deadline that any team has made. The Dallas Cowboys are the biggest losers from the trade deadline this year, man, because you're 3-5. Your season is in jeopardy of going left. You lose your starting quarterback. You're down multiple starters on the defensive line. So how does Jerry Jones think that this team is going to get better? Trading for a guy that's in his 2nd season and still hasn't called a touchdown yet. And the worst team in the league was willing to trade him for pretty much nothing. This is the prime reason why people continue to mock the Cowboys, why nobody takes this team serious, because it doesn't seem like Jerry Jones takes his job as the general manager and the executive of this team and the owner seriously. He's just making these roll of a dice trades, trying to kick the can on these dudes that got all these athletic traits, but they don't possess the necessary traits that it takes to succeed at their position. You wasted a mid-round selection on Trey Lance, and you wasted another mid-round selection on Jonathan Mingo. This is the worst trade off the deadline that we've seen, people. I don't know what Jerry Jones got going on in his head down there in Big D, man, but I don't feel bad for Dallas Cowboy fans neither, by the way. You know, I just continue to laugh at this team because that's all there is to do when you talk about the Cowboys. It's just laugh at them because this trade is just absolutely laughable. If you gave up a 7-rounder, that would have been cool, but adding a 4th-rounder as the cherry on top, how do you get fleeced by the Carolina Panthers? Wow. America's team, people. America's team. The Cincinnati Bengals, they've gotten in on the trade action. They've made only their second in-season trade in franchise history, acquiring Bears running back Khalil Herbert in exchange for a 2nd-round pick. This is only the second in-season trade that they've made in franchise history. The last time they made an in-season trade was back in 2020 when they traded Carlos Dunlap to the Seattle Seahawks. Khalil Herbert, he could be a really sneaky addition to this Bengals offense. We know they got a lot of weapons as it is already with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki has been a really good pickup for him. He's coming off a really good performance. And they lost Zach Moss, who's going to be out indefinitely with a neck injury. Their leading rusher has been Chase Brown, who is more of a good scat back and a good pass catching back. Khalil Herbert is going to allow you to be more physical running the football because he's better running the ball in between the tackles, getting the tough yards through the middle of the defense compared to a guy like Chase Brown, who's more of a outside hitter. And Khalil Herbert, I'm a little bit surprised that the Bears didn't really play him that much this year because his 4 seasons in Chicago, he's been really good, averaging 4.8 yards per attempt. He has 9 touchdowns, 1,791 rushing yards. This guy can play. This isn't one of those running backs that you're trading for that you don't really believe you can get much production out of him. He could be a really good pass protector for Joe Burrow, which, you know, the offensive line and the pass protection for Cincinnati since Joe Burrow has been drafted hasn't been nothing to write home about. So I love this trade for Khalil Herbert by the Bengals, man. This is a really good back that a lot of people don't really know too much about because he hasn't really gotten a lot of opportunities in Chicago this year. But when the Bears have called his number in years prior, he's been really good after contact, really physical. And the Cincinnati Bengals rushing attack right now currently ranks 27th in the NFL. So you obviously needed to upgrade at this position. Even if you didn't have the injury to Zach Moss, you probably still needed some help in that running back room. Now you're going to be able to have a RB duo that could be complementary for each other. You know, Chase Brown gets helped out by this trade because he never was a running back that had the skill set to take the kind of punishment with his body type running the football in the middle of a defense. You can't run inside zone or power or duo with a guy like Chase Young. He's more of an outside zone guy. With the guy like Khalil Herbert, however, though, it's going to give your running game more physicality with the kind of bruiser that Khalil Herbert, is as a running back. And he's really explosive once he gets to the second level. He has good acceleration. He does have really good vision as well. And he has a good amount of quickness for a guy his size also. So this is a trade that isn't going to get a lot of attention. But, you know, as we near the playoffs and we get into week 15, week 16, and you start playing in harsh weather conditions, it gets snowed out and it's cold and you're struggling to throw the football, a guy like Khalil Herbert could really come in handy for the Cincinnati Bengals. And lastly, the Detroit Lions make the trade that most of us saw coming weeks ago when Aiden Hutchinson broke his fibula. They acquire Zadarius Smith from the Cleveland Browns. They're giving the Browns a 2025 5th rounder and a 6th-round pick for the 2026 draft. Meanwhile, the Lions, they get Zadarius Smith and a 7th-round pick for 2026. Zadarius Smith, don't let the age fool you. He's 32 years old, but he's having one of the best seasons of his career in the last couple of seasons. He already has 5 sacks, and that will rank second on the Lions at this moment, only behind Aiden Hutchinson at 7.5. I believe Alil McNeil is 3rd on the team with 2.5 sacks. So that shows you how much help the Lions needed when it came to improving the edge rusher position on their defense, because you already got a really good secondary with Carlton Davis and Brian Branch, but your Achilles heel has been your lack of consistency at getting after the quarterback. Now that you get Zadarius Smith, he's no Aiden Hutchinson, but at least he can give you a little bit more juice off the edge than what you had previously after the injury to Aiden Hutchinson. And now that you got Zadarius Smith, it should open things up for Ozarike, Alil McNeil. You also do have, what's his name, DJ Reader as well. And Zadarius Smith, he's pretty good against the run as well. So you're getting somebody who's going to give you the best of both worlds. You're getting somebody that's good at getting after the quarterback and then also can be productive at stopping the run. And for a team that is trying to make a Super Bowl push, this was a trade that had to happen, and there wasn't really nobody else that you could have gotten that was better. So although he's 32 years old, this was a pretty good trade for a team that desperately needed to improve their pass rush position. And if you make it to the Super Bowl, there is a possibility that Aiden Hutchinson could play in that game for you, because he's going to be out for the next 3 to 4 months. But you know, if you get to that game, you could have him back and you get Zadarius Smith on the opposite side rushing along him. You know, I would love to see them bring back Zadarius Smith after this season. You know, like, he's one of those guys that seems to be getting better with age. And on a team like the Lions, where you got a guy like Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, guys who are really good motivators, you're going to get some really high-level play out of Zadarius Smith. The way he's been playing in Cleveland looks like Pro Bowl caliber in my eyes. So you're getting somebody that, yeah, there's a drop-off between him and Aiden Hutchinson, but you know, at least you got somebody that can give offense to somebody to have to worry about. It's not like Zadarius Smith is old to the point where offenses don't have to game plan for him, because this dude is really good. And it's not like the Lions didn't have any players on their defensive line that can get after the quarterback. It's just that with a guy like Zadarius Smith now, it can open up one-on-one opportunities for a guy like Alil McNeil or Ozarike, because Zadarius Smith, in certain situations, you kind of do have to double team him, because when he was with the Browns, he was wrecking havoc with Myles Garrett. So when you got already good pieces on your defensive line and you plug Zadarius Smith in, you know, you end up having a really good pass rush. So this was a really great trade for the Detroit Lions, a must get for him, actually. So this is it for my thoughts on the NFL's 2024 trade deadline. Leave who you guys feel are the biggest winners from this year's deadline down in the comment section down below. Like, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. And we will be going live in an hour or two from now, because I want to give my reactions to the revealing of the college football playoff rankings that are going to be released in less than 15 minutes. So shout out to Chris Brady, shout out to Kate Roan, shout out to Robert Rowe for tuning in. Before you leave up on out of here, share the stream, like, subscribe to the channel, turn on bell, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. Follow us on Instagram at JTSports_ and on X at JTSports__. Give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. We're not just a YouTube channel. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts from. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. The link